Veteran Salute is sponsored by the Devon James Injury Lawyers.
A Garden Plain Army veteran says World War II had just ended when she signed up to serve.
As Gwen Bevel and photojournalist Nick Kiefer shows us, Roberta Seiwert Lampe says it was difficult to convince her parents to sign the papers.
That's right. She says that's because she wasn't anywhere near 21 at the time. She was barely 18. She says she did have a really good journalism teacher who encouraged her to write that letter halfway around the world.
Well, all these bylines.
Roberta Seiwert Lampe's first bylines appeared in print in what was the Cheney Sentinel, and that publication led to so much more of a calling.
They figured I was too young for public information. I suppose I wouldn't know what the heck I was doing.
Since the Air Force turned her away, she became a soldier.
It was from the 2nd Platoon, Company B.
Lampe was one of 300 women.
This is the buttons that they have on the wax.
Her decision to serve as part of the Women's Army Corps wasn't okay with her father.
He said to me, "I'll sign your papers. If you don't like it, don't ever come crying to me." And my answer was, "Don't worry, I won't."
Lampe and one other woman ended up in public information training at Fort Slocum. She says they had to ride a ferry to get there.
Since I had already requested Europe, that's where I went.
Once in Frankfurt, the women worked out of the IG Furban building, one of the few spared during World War II. She says the Cold War was on, which is why the women would be called to stand out in the streets in the middle of the night.
We had to stop them and make sure there was no dogs with them, because they would be traveling under cover of darkness, probably just by starlight, and they couldn't have dogs that would bark and alert the enemy as to where they were.
She says they were stationed close to the East German border, and the East Germans were headed for safety in France. She says one time she and another woman were also sent on a more than 2-day trip that took them just 3 miles from the border.
That was the scariest night I ever spent in my life. All I could think of was, oh my, you never know. We would be sitting ducks.
Their job was to determine how long it would take the families to get there.
French, no German. We were winging it.
She says those types of assignments were always in addition to what she called her real job.
This is the picture of the young GI that won the trip so his wife could come over.
Here's the story where she documented it all. She says she also met famous people from all over the world and some who became quite infamous.
Here I am wearing a creation.
That's because her lieutenant told her when covering anything at the Officers' Wives Club to always go in civilian clothes.
That's all wives of colonels and generals and majors, and they will try and pull rank on you so that you write the most about them.
And she even figured out how to get them a mention.
I wrote in there and said, yeah, here I was hobnobbing with all these women, and they had no idea I was just a PFC, which I was.
Lampe says the Army allowed her to experience so much.
This was the little church that I went to.
She was also part of an American and German choir.
Because it was right in amongst the, where the Germans lived.
She says she's proud to have been part of the Northern Area Command. And although she put aside the public information hat years ago, she didn't stop writing.
Compiled, written, and edited by me.
From the St. Joe Centennial book to novels to children's books.
These are all stories about Christmas.
Under the same byline it all started under, Lampe went on to put pen to paper until she says the pen ran out of ink, and those many works still have publishers calling.
The last couple that called, I said, look, the copyright's still in my name. If you print it and you get a movie contract, then I'll go with you.
Seiwert Lampe also laughed about her driver's training there in the Army and says she's pretty sure the soldier who trained her lost some years off his life. She says she was always thankful for that training, though, since she ended up hauling wheat for her husband in a truck just like that for 30 years here in Kansas. Here for you, Gwen Bevel, KSN News 3.
The Devon James Injury Lawyers here with one very special veteran, and that special is 5th class Roberta Seiwert Lampe, who served our country during the height of the Cold War. On behalf of all of Kansas, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Veteran Salute is sponsored by the Devon James Injury Lawyers.